Welcome to the LGS show. I'm your host, Liam Sellers. Thanks for being here once again. I know I've been MIA these past couple of weeks. I've been preoccupied with other obligations. I was out of town recently. So now that I'm back, I want to use today's episode as an opportunity to give some of my general thoughts and observations as to the upcoming election, which is tomorrow. One of the overarching challenges of this show is that I have so much content in my head that I want to decompartmentalize with you, but I just simply don't have enough time. So regarding today's episode, I'm going to talk about what's at stake, at least in my opinion. I'm going to share my voting experience this year. I'm going to analyze some polls, other statistical measurements, and data. I'm going to kind of give some general observations that I've made throughout this election season. And then at the end, I'm going to give a prediction as to who wins the White House, the Senate, and the House. First things first, I'm not going to sit here and use this episode as a means to tell you how to vote, who you should or shouldn't vote for, because who you vote for is entirely up to you and nobody else's business. Personally, I think it's condescending and arrogant when somebody tells me how to vote or who I should vote for. Additionally, I'm not here to cast judgment on who you voted for. People vote for a variety of reasons, and typically those reasons align with their self-interest. So people are going to vote for the candidate that advances those self-interests. It's human nature. What you've seen on social media and cable TV is you'll have a guy on one side saying, how can somebody with quote unquote Christian values support Trump? And on the contrary, you have another guy that says, how can somebody morally support Biden? The truth is, spare me the BS. You're not my rabbi. You're not my priest. You're not my parents. I don't need lectures from you about morality and decency and values. I simply don't. And be mindful of those who proclaim to be morally superior than you because they voted for a specific candidate. Life has a way of humbling you very fast. One day you're on your high horse thinking you're self-righteous and above everybody morally, and the next day you're caught with your pants down. And when I say that, I mean that figuratively. Well, unless you're Jeffrey Toobin, then I mean that literally. By the way, that couldn't have happened to a better guy. This guy has a history of being a terrible person, a hack, quick to smear Brett Kavanaugh.
The world he describes at Georgetown Prep of, really absurd amounts of drinking, weird hostility towards women. I mean, it's all of a piece. It is all consistent with one another. It certainly has the ring of truth to me.
And let's be honest, the motive was probably to stop Kavanaugh, not to have justice prevail.
Probably true. So what?
And this is quote unquote CNN's legal chief analyst, whatever that means. And he gets caught with one of these. Couldn't have happened to a better guy. Quick to cast judgment, but the chickens always come home to roost. Always. And be mindful of that once again, because CNN's going to lecture you if you vote a certain way, you're compromised morally, you have terrible values, or, you're a terrible guy because you don't wear a mask when you walk your dog around your neighborhood. CNN still hasn't fired him. He's still on their payroll, and he'll probably make a return very soon. Because if you say enough bad things about the president, pretty much all sins are forgivable. So, once again, don't cast judgment. You got to do what you got to do. I get it. And I'm not here to declare myself morally superior to you because I'm not. We're all flawed. Now I'll briefly discuss my voting experience so far in 2020. In short, it was easy, quick, and smooth. I voted early in person on Saturday down the street from my house in California. Couldn't have been more satisfied with how things were conducted. I understand that as a California resident, my vote for the presidency is pretty much irrelevant, but that's not why I went. More importantly, I went because I wanted to have a say in the state propositions and the local and municipal elections. And voters tend to overlook this, but who you elect in terms of your local school boards, your state representatives, and your municipal and county measures have a much more profound impact on your life than any of the national offices such as the Senate, House of Representatives, or White House. So do your own research, vote accordingly, but understand that those decisions have such monumental impacts on your life, and it's important that you take them very seriously. Now I'll transition into what I personally think is at stake in this upcoming election. For me, it's beyond the policy. I think when you have a political party advocating for a total restructuring and transformation, and arguably in some cases a destruction of our founding institutions, it's a frightening idea to me. Packing the Supreme Court, abolishing the Electoral College, eliminating the filibuster, expanding the Senate for political purposes. When I see that being proposed, I just can't get behind it, plain and simple. And that's what it came down to for me was protecting, or at least trying to preserve the founding institutions of our country. That's what compelled me to vote. I want to talk about polling and other statistical data that I think will help us kind of make our prediction as to the outcome of this upcoming election. If you look at the polls, they overwhelmingly favor Joe Biden. Now, I'm not like those guys that say, oh, look, disregard the polls, 2016, look what happened. I think polls are important. I think we should definitely value them and take them into consideration. I just don't happen to think that they're the end-all, be-all. If you look in 2016, the national polling wasn't that far off. However, there was major discrepancies in the upper Midwestern states with the polls that underestimated Trump support. But I do consider the polls to be important. The reason why I don't use them as the end-all be-all is because polls are merely a snapshot of time. They're extremely volatile, and they're subject to change based upon like a new developing story or an unforeseen change of events. So I don't put all my stock into polling. I look at other data, and some data that you might not even take into consideration that kind of favor towards the GOP, or at least make this a much closer election than is being portrayed in the media. What am I talking about? First, I look at data regarding sports. People are tuning out sports. Ratings are down. And I think a large part of that has to do with a lot of politics being infused into sports. Those are numbers that we should take into consideration. I also look at gun purchases. In some states, you have over 100% of people, or excuse me, 100% increase of people purchasing guns for the first time. I look at movement of feet. What I mean by that, people moving states. You have people leaving New York, Illinois, California in record droves. The cost to get a U-Haul right now to Houston from LA is about $3,000, whereas Houston to LA is like $600. So you have a mass exodus from these blue states that I think are not telling the story in the national polls. I also want to talk about the early vote, which is what Democrats were emphasizing. They're not really making much leeway there. They have leads, but they're not sizable in terms of North Carolina, Florida, Arizona, Wisconsin, and Michigan. The only state where they have a very sizable lead is in Pennsylvania, and we're going to see what happens there. Now, Republicans are betting on their voters to turn out in massive droves on Election Day. I don't see it being like an absolute unprecedented turnout vote on Election Day, because Republicans have actually maintained striking distance within the early voting. So I think they're kind of overemphasizing that a little bit. The early voting is pretty abysmal if you're a Democrat strategist. You should be well ahead, because they've been emphasizing their voters vote early, in person, or excuse me, by mail, absentee ballots. And the fact is, Republicans have kept within striking distance. It's going to be close. Again, this is just my opinion from my observations, what I think tells the story. I look at other factors. But ultimately, I think the biggest factor is it comes down to turnout. It comes down to turnout. You can have all the polls in the world, but if your base doesn't turn out, it's irrelevant. Before I divulge my predictions as to who wins the White House, the Senate, and the House, I want to quickly provide to you 5 miscellaneous thoughts I have regarding this upcoming election. Number 1, the media narrative that Joe Biden is going to win in a landslide is completely preposterous. I think it's going to be a close and contested election. It's going to come down to one state. Don't take my word for it. Just look at the behavior of the Biden campaign. Earlier this year, he hired over 500 lawyers ready to litigate the election results in federal court, should it be necessary. Does that look like the behavior of somebody that thinks they're going to cakewalk to the presidency and cruise in a landslide? I don't think so. I'm not saying he can't win, but it's not going to be a landslide in his favor. Number 2, Election Day violence. You're seeing throughout cities images of New York, LA, Washington, D.C., of businesses within those districts boarding up their properties in case of potential violence on Election Day should one side lose. And you're seeing the media like Wolf Blitzer right here playing the victim card, saying, wow, how could we have gotten to this low of a point in our country? They are the number one culprits of this situation. They have been complicit in this behavior. They have encouraged it silently or have justified it. And now they want to play the victim card. They're going to say, like, Trump supporters are going to get agitated and cause chaos. I just don't buy that. Last I checked, New York City isn't necessarily MAGA country. LA isn't necessarily Trump country. The fact is, Antifa and the majority of these agitators have been left-leaning and are just simply finding any excuse to engage in violent behavior. It's that simple. Number 3, voter suppression. Should Biden lose, you're going to hear one of the charges being made that it was due to voter suppression by Republicans. Dispel that. Just don't even buy it. You're going to have record turnout this year. North of 160 million people are probably going to vote. Record shattering. So if Republicans are engaging in some type of voter suppression, they're doing a pretty awful job of it. Now, you're seeing Republicans contest certain decisions made by states to alter voting deadlines in terms of mail-in ballots. The simple fact is the state legislatures have the final say in how the election rules are to be enforced on election night and within those respective states. Don't seek the courts. The courts should really not have a say. The simple fact is the state legislatures are the ones in their constitutions charged with the responsibility of overseeing election rules, and they should have the final say. So there's no voter suppression going on. Please, that's just dispel that. It's BS. Number 4, celebrities endorsing Biden. You have Lady Gaga, you have Stevie Wonder out. I don't understand why they keep resorting to celebrities. The American people tune them out. It doesn't help, and they're just making the same mistake over and over again. I just think it's stupid that Biden's campaigning. Just go to the people. Get rid of the celebrities. They're going to do what they're going to do, but they just haven't seemed to learn their lesson from 2016 that celebrities endorsing you doesn't seem to work out. And number 5, everything's going to be all right. Okay, it's not going to be the end of the world if your side loses on Tuesday. I do think that there's going to be consequential results due to this election, but it's not going to be the end of the world. We're not going to Canada or Mexico or Spain. I'm right where I want to be. In short, this is who I think is going to win. I think Trump wins re-election, and I'll put up the map right here. So when it comes to Georgia, Texas, and Arizona, it's a matter of Republicans coming home. You see Biden pretty much capping out at 45, 46%. Biden, he's not going to get higher than that. It's a matter of Republicans coming home. And I think they will in Georgia, in Texas, and in Arizona. Florida, what I'm looking for is seniors. They say the Hispanic vote that Trump's getting it. I do think that he will have an increase in that. But at the same time, I'm looking for seniors. He needs seniors to win that state. And in the upper Midwest, I think he wins Pennsylvania. I don't think he wins Michigan, Wisconsin. I think it's going to be close in terms of those states. They're toss-ups, but I think I'm going to land them in Biden's favor. I think Trump wins Pennsylvania because of fracking. Biden made a huge mistake in committing to eliminating fossil fuels. He pretty much alienated the whole western portion of Pennsylvania. So this is what I think the results are going to be. Now, in terms of the Senate, I don't have a map for that, but I think Republicans hold the Senate. I think they squeak out victories in North Carolina, Iowa, and Arizona. I think they lose Colorado and Maine. And the one reason why I think Republicans will hold the Senate comes down to this, the Supreme Court, which, by the way, this is a good book, One Vote Away by Ted Cruz. Really good book. That's the reason why I think Republicans hold the Senate. And in the House, I think Democrats keep the House. There's just too many suburban districts in California, Colorado, Texas that Republicans used to win that are trending blue, and I think they retain the House. So in many ways, it's like 2012, except the inverse. 2012, Obama won. Democrats kept the Senate. Republicans kept the House. This year, I think it's going to be the inverse of that. Republicans win the Senate. Trump wins the White House, and Democrats keep the House. That wraps up today's episode of the LGS Show. Once again, I want to thank you for tuning in. Let's see what happens tomorrow. I'll see you next time.